You picture the Odyssey the way movies taught you to, a hero battling cyclopes, sirens and sea monsters, fighting his way home across a decade of impossible odds. It's a good story, it's also almost entirely missing the point. The real answer is far stranger. Odysseus wasn't lost at sea for 10 years because of monsters. He was lost because he couldn't stop being the man who won the Trojan War. Think about how the Odyssey actually begins. Not with a storm, not with a monster. It begins with Odysseus and his men raiding a peaceful town called Ismarus, right after leaving Troy, for no reason except that they can. They kill the men, take the loot, and Odysseus's crew refuses to leave when he tells them to. That single choice, made in the very first pages, sets off almost everything that follows. This isn't a hero being tested by fate. This is a war hero who hasn't figured out how to stop being at war. To understand what's really happening in this poem, you have to stop asking what monster is next and start asking why Odysseus keeps making the same mistake in different disguises. Look at the Cyclops Polyphemus. Odysseus and his men escape the cave using nothing but cleverness, a fake name, and a sharpened stake. It's a brilliant escape. Then, sailing away safely, Odysseus does something the story goes out of its way to slow down and dwell on. He shouts his real name back to the shore, taunting the blinded giant, even as his own men beg him to stay quiet and just leave. Classicist Bernard Knox, who spent much of his career studying Homeric epic, pointed out that this moment isn't about cleverness at all, it's about ego. Odysseus needs Polyphemus, and by extension the world, to know exactly who defeated him. That single shouted name is what gets Poseidon, the Cyclops' father, hunting Odysseus for the rest of the poem. The monster wasn't the obstacle, the impulse to be recognized was. This pattern repeats with almost mechanical precision. On the island of Aeolia, the wind god gives Odysseus a literal gift, a bag containing every dangerous wind sealed away so his ship can sail home in peace. Odysseus succeeds. His men, distrustful and exhausted, secretly open the bag while he sleeps, assuming it's hidden treasure, and blow the ship back to where they started. Notice what actually causes this disaster. Not fate, not a monster. Ordinary human suspicion, and a captain who never explained himself to the people risking their lives alongside him. Even the famous Sirens episode, so often remembered as a story about temptation, is really a story about control. Odysseus has himself tied to the mast specifically so he can hear the forbidden song without dying from it, an experience denied to every other sailor in history. Homer scholar Emily Wilson, whose modern translation re-examined many of these episodes, has pointed out how often the poem quietly frames Odysseus's cleverness as something closer to compulsive need, a hero who cannot simply pass by an experience meant to destroy other men without first proving he can survive it. Here's where the psychology gets sharper. Odysseus spent 10 years as a soldier at Troy, a place where deception, dominance, and constant vigilance kept him alive. War doesn't just end when the fighting stops. It reshapes how a person interprets the world. Every stranger becomes a possible threat. Every situation becomes something to control or outsmart. Classical historian Jonathan Shea, who studied combat trauma by directly comparing Homeric epic to the testimony of modern war veterans, argued that Odysseus displays exactly the behavioral patterns now recognized in post-traumatic stress: hypervigilance, difficulty trusting others, impulsive risk-taking, and an inability to simply rest even when rest is finally available. The wandering isn't punishment from the gods so much as it is a mind that has forgotten how to stop fighting. This reframes almost every episode in the poem. Circe's island, where Odysseus's men are turned into pigs, becomes less about magic and more about a crew who have been reduced to animal survival instinct by years of trauma and violence, waiting for someone to remind them they're still human. The land of the lotus eaters, where a taste of the plant makes men forget home entirely and lose all will to leave, reads less like sorcery and more like a terrifyingly accurate description of what surrender to numbness actually feels like after prolonged trauma. Even Odysseus's stop in the underworld, speaking with the dead, mirrors something Shea observed directly in veterans, a need to make peace with the fallen before genuinely being able to return to the living. And Ithaca itself. When Odysseus finally arrives home, he doesn't walk through the front door. He disguises himself as a beggar and quietly studies his own household before revealing who he is. Even reunion has to be handled like reconnaissance. Even coming home requires assessing the terrain first. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The Odyssey isn't really a travel story with obstacles in the way of a homecoming. It's a portrait of what it actually looks like when a soldier tries to become a civilian again and doesn't fully know how. Every monster is real within the world of the poem, but every monster also happens to appear exactly where Odysseus's own instincts, sharpened by 10 years of war, make the situation worse before it gets better. So the next time you picture Odysseus lashed to a mast, or blinding a cyclops, or besting a witch, remember what the poem was actually built to explore. It was never really about the distance between Troy and Ithaca. It was about the much longer distance between a man who knows how to survive a war and a man who still remembers how to come home from one.